Hi, my name is Leah Chantel. Today I'm talking about what attracts 5 sensory people to 6 sensory people. And this is a really interesting conversation. One of the biggest pain points that 6 sensory people have is that they are surrounded by 5 sensory people who don't believe their beliefs and don't support them. So there are a couple of important antidotes to this. But I also want to make a different point than the usual argument that you need to find your soul family, you need to connect with people who are like you and have the same beliefs as you. Yes, this advice is good advice, and it's a good idea for people who believe in their intuition, people who believe in psychic ability or mediumship and their ability to communicate with their ancestors. When you have these spiritual beliefs, it's definitely a good idea to connect with other people who have the same spiritual beliefs as you. And that will help counteract some of the skepticism or negativity you might get from 5 sensory people around you. However, have you ever heard of the phrase opposites attract? So there's a reason why 6 sensory people, I believe, attract 5 sensory people into their life. And you can make it work. There are ways to find balance. You don't have to have an exact match in terms of your belief system to have a good relationship with somebody else. And so that's what I'm talking about today. How do 5 sensory people who might be more inclined to believe in atheism or don't have very much spiritual beliefs at all, how can we get along with people like that when we are more spiritually inclined? We believe in our intuition, we believe in psychic ability, or we believe in contacting our ancestors for love and support. This is a really good question. So I'm going to present an interesting argument here that 6 sensories have a habit of hiding who they are and changing who they are. They're kind of like chameleons and they like to shapeshift into 5 sensory people, but they're not actually 5 sensory people. They're masquerading as 5 sensory people. And what's interesting about this is these people will make the argument that it's so hard to change because it's so hard to feel safe in the world, being out and being your true self as a spiritually deviant person. Let's put it that way. That sounds a bit negative, but you have a little bit of a different spiritual belief than the typical religious person. And basically, I'd like to argue that when you're hiding, you're actually in more trouble of changing yourself and being walked all over like a doormat by 5 sensory people because you're trying too hard to be like them. So I'll give you some examples. Let's say you're 6 sensory and you're starting to get an inclination that you should be eating vegetarian food, but you're dating someone who's 5 sensory, their favorite food is steak. And what do? You follow them to the steak restaurant, you order the steak like they do, and then you have a terrible stomach ache after the meal is done. And then you have to go home early because you're not feeling too well. So what happens is that you haven't had that much fun on your date with the 5 sensory. You need to go home early to deal with your stomach ache. And then basically you haven't really shown up being your true self. This is a tough conversation to have because sometimes some genuinely contentious conversations do come up when you're talking about vegetarianism versus eating meat. And my advice for this is you should be true to yourself, but you don't have to face it in adversarial terms like, I'm this type of diet and you're this type of diet. I think the better way to approach it is to just make your needs known of what kind of food you want to eat without putting a label on it. You say you want to order the salad, or you say you want to order the thing that you'd really appreciate eating without making a big deal about what dietary term you are. But you do make your preference known. You don't try to blend in with the other person. I think that's really, really key because when we try to blend in with 5 sensory people, they actually lose respect for us. I think 5 sensory people, ironically, although they don't believe in intuition, they still have a sense of intuition and they can tell when 6 sensory people are trying to blend in and be just like them. And then they lose respect for us. Isn't that interesting? Even though they have a different belief system, but they sense energy in their own way. And they sense it when we're trying to blend in with them instead of trying to be true to ourselves. And then they lose respect for us. I'm going to give you another example. Let's say you want to go to a park one weekend, but The plan is your five sensory person, friend, partner, or whoever it is, wants to go to a very loud, crowded concert instead of going to the park. What do? Do you purchase the concert tickets that are really popular and selling out and make your plans to go with them? Or do you keep your plans on going to the park? Because let me tell you, a lot of closet six sensory people will go with the flow and buy the concert ticket, even though it's costing them money. They're going into a crowded place that feels uncomfortable. The music is too loud for their nervous system. And basically they go and they have a horrible time at the concert. I'm not saying all six sensories are like this, but it's a common characteristic that we don't really do well in crowds, and we don't do well in loud music because it's very strenuous for our nervous system. Now, having said that, there could be exceptions. I've gone to a concert and had a lot of fun. It was even metal, like it wasn't a happy concert. But what I loved about it was all the beautiful lighting, all the beautiful design, and the creativity in the music. That was something that was really feeding my spirit, even though there was a bit of a metal, loud element to it. And I got something out of it. So you never know. You don't want to judge things too quickly, and it's good to have new experiences. But I think what we do sometimes as six sensories is we try too hard to become like the five sensory person because we're overly empathic. And then the five sensory person senses this and loses respect for us. So it's good to grow, it's good to have new experiences, but once you understand what your needs are and what your preferences are, and you don't enjoy being around crowds or loud music, then you need to make those needs and preferences known to your five sensory counterparts. Otherwise, they will lose respect for you. Now, I'm going to go on with more examples. Let's say your five sensory person isn't so good at preparing meals or organizing their homes or whatever, and you decide to take that on as a six sensory person because you're very good at cleaning up and cooking and things like that. So, it depends on the nature of the relationship with the person, but if the five sensory didn't ask for that and doesn't want that kind of help necessarily, and they don't really mind not having food or having a chaotic home, what happens if you try to help them and be overly empathic is you lose more of who you are as a six sensory. You lose more of your time that you might need for meditation or quiet or prayer or whatever it is you need to do to recharge. You give it away to that other person, and that other person doesn't necessarily appreciate it, and what they'll do next is they'll start nitpicking your efforts. They'll say that the food you're preparing isn't good enough. I don't like the flavor of it. Or you missed that spot that you were cleaning. And they sort of will start to chip away at your self-esteem, and you might get really angry and controlling as a sixth sensory. You might think how unappreciative they are. I'm trying so hard to help them. But it was actually your error in a way as a sixth sensory, because you're trying to help and you're being too empathic and you're jumping into the fray too quickly when maybe the five sensory doesn't really need your help. And it's a form of being controlling, like you have to keep the place clean, or you have to keep them fed, or it has to be X, Y, and Z in our life. And it's not a wise idea to jump into the fray and do more than you're asked unless the other person really appreciated it and really needs you to do that, and they've asked you to do that in a very kind, loving way. If that hasn't happened, then don't jump in and do stuff for people. It's not a good idea, and they'll actually lose respect for you. So the thing that six sensories really need to do in life is be who they really are and share their preferences and make their needs known, but in a way that's loving and in a way that, I don't know, you don't want to be that person who ditches last minute and makes your needs known at the very last minute, but sometimes we'll do that because we've tried so hard to blend in, and then at the very last minute we just realize we can't do it anymore, and then we give up because we're exhausted. This is not a great approach for six sensories either. Whatever you commit to, it's good to follow through on your commitments as much as you can. But at the beginning, before you even make those commitments, make your needs and preferences known. If you need quiet and you need time to meditate, then ask for that. If you need time to work on your book or your materials for your course, then you need to let people around you know that you need your time and your space to do that. If you don't make your needs and preferences known, what will happen is you'll try too hard to blend in with five sensory people who have different values and different ideas about life. You'll try to control them, they won't appreciate it, and then they'll walk all over you. So it's not a good result. But if you kind of give them their freedom, you make your needs and preferences known at the beginning, and you keep your emotional control. You never get angry with them or yell at them to do something that's inappropriate, then you're going to have a better life as a sixth sensory. You're not going to be in the closet hiding. You're not going to be a doormat. You're not going to be controlling. You're going to have a really nice balance where the people around you who are different are going to understand your needs and preferences, and they're going to meet those needs and preferences in an appropriate way that's good for you. I hope you all enjoyed this video about what attracts five sensories to six sensories and how to keep balance in a relationship when you do have different belief systems. If you have any advice that you'd like to share in addition to what I've shared today on how to keep that balance, I'd be really interested to hear that. Or if you have any questions about a certain situation that you're trying to work through and you haven't found the right answer yet, definitely leave a comment. I'd be happy to answer some of those questions. If you haven't already, hit subscribe if you want to get more video updates from this channel. And don't forget to hit like if you've really enjoyed the content that I've shared here today. I hope you all enjoyed this little video, and I'm really excited to make more for you in the future and have these conversations with you again. You're all lovely, and I've had so much fun sharing content with you, and I hope you're all having an amazing week. Take care. Bye now.